Are athletes injecting their penises with acid? Is not the story I had on my bingo card coming into these Olympic Games. And that being said, I did pick up on the story and I referenced it a few videos back. But why on earth and how on earth has this story gotten so big? Pardon the pun. I have been a trained news journalist for a quarter of a century. I've been a sports journalist and broadcaster for 15 years. And these are the fifth Olympic Games that I have covered. So when it comes to sensationalist Olympic stories, I've seen it all. So let me take you behind this story to work out where on earth it's come from and whether or not it's actually true. So if you missed the story, it originally came from Bild, a German tabloid newspaper, which claimed that there were rumors circulating in the ski jumping world of athletes potentially injecting hyaluronic acid or paraffin down there to make the crotch area bigger in male athletes. Why would the size of the crotch matter? Well, if you missed my previous video, it means a larger suit, and the suits can act like mini parachutes. The longer it takes that parachute to fall to the ground, and it will take longer if the parachute is bigger, the further the athlete can jump. A larger crotch, a larger suit, a longer jump. So far, so plausible, right? Right, except that these suits are measured at the start of the ski jumping season with 3D modeling. So an athlete cannot inject themselves before an Olympic Games and have an advantage because really the suit's already been made. Anything that's bigger is just going to get in the way. And theoretically, hyaluronic acid would make that part of the body at least a little bit heavier, whether that makes a difference or not. But that's not going to give an advantage. So in theory, yes, if the athlete was to go back to the start of the season and enhance their crotch size, then it could make a difference. They could have a larger suit made for the entirety of the season. Everything back down there would shrink back to the normal size, but they'd still have the size of the suit, and so they could float further. Now, if an athlete could get just 5 or 6 extra meters on a 130 meter jump by slowing their drop but maintaining their forward speed, that would be a significant advantage. Which brings us to whether this is actually happening. The short answer, no. Sorry to disappoint you, at least not that we know of. The World Anti-Doping Agency, WADA, has said there have been no investigations brought to them, no complaints brought to them, no suspicions brought to them. And if they were, they would investigate. And FIS, the international governing body, have also said they have no intelligence about this practice actually happening in real life. So why has the story gotten so big? Well, the original Bild article is behind a paywall. Now, I pay subscriptions for multiple newspapers. I firmly believe that proper journalism isn't free and it shouldn't be free. We should pay for the good work that good journalists do. However, I didn't want to be throwing my money at a tabloid newspaper, no offense to tabloid newspapers, but I wanted to make sure that this wasn't just some sort of a sensationalist story making a bit of a joke of a sport coming into the Winter Olympic Games before I did that. So we did extra research on the side, and what I've been able to find is that there is no concrete allegation in the Bild original story either. They are reporting rumors from within the ski jumping world, athletes talking amongst themselves about the possibility of maybe doing this practice and whether it would actually then give an advantage rather than anyone saying that they think it's actually happening. They also quoted a doctor to see whether this would be actually practical. They said, yeah, it could work, but it would bring unnecessary risks, but that's enough. Doctor says this could work and enhance the size of the crotch. And there is context for this. There is the Norwegian scandal from the World Championships last year where members of the Norwegian ski jumping team were banned for 3 to 18 months, depending on the severity of the involvement, for artificially enhancing the size of the suit. They tampered with the crotch area, made it bigger. They were caught on camera. And the reason being the same thing. They wanted to make the athletes fly further. So there has been a recent legitimate crotch scandal within ski jumping. Bild have just taken it that little bit further. And I say little bit further. This has blown up. Headlines all around the world. Penisgate. I'll do the hand the other way. Penisgate, this has been very lazily and inevitably called. And the problem with those headlines is people read that bit and assume it relates to a fact or a factually backed up story within the body of the text. They don't need to read anymore, and that's where the genius lies. You've got newsrooms all over the world looking now at trying to report in the Olympic Games in as attractive a way as possible that manages to bring in viewers, bring in readers, and keep them hooked. As soon as you mention something like this, that's it. They're watching, they're subscribing, they're listening, they're reading. Doesn't really matter if it's not true. I was an Olympics correspondent for 7 years, and for each of the 2 games that I was building up to within that cycle, the pressure grew closer to the games to be able to get an original story, a headline making story, and or a story that other news outlets would chase. Built have done that brilliantly. As a journalist, if this story then landed in an international publication or a national publication, my news editor would come to me and say, what can you get on this? Verify this story. Dig on this story. I want this 10x. So my job to appease the editor would be to chase this story, to get new quotes, to try to work out whether it was true or not, but certainly to keep the story running. What happens next? WADA make a statement on the story. The World Anti-Doping Agency making a comment on the story is enough. That gives legitimacy to all serious news organizations to report the story. Never mind that WADA were only commenting on it because they were asked by journalists tasked with furthering this story. And all WADA said was, we would investigate. What would WADA realistically say to a story like this? Any kind of a cheating scandal, a doping scandal, are they going to say, no, we're not going to touch it and we're not going to comment? Obviously, they're going to say that they would investigate. That's their literal job. It is the function of the organization. But news organizations have the quote from WADA. Done. We got a story. So there you go. That's how the news cycle works. That's how it works within an Olympic bubble in particular, because don't forget, most people who are following an Olympic Games are not experts in these sports. They're casual fans who want a little hook to get into the sport for the 17 days of the competition. And for them, it doesn't really matter whether the story was true or not. It's a fun thing to chat about with their friends, and it almost becomes fact. The danger is for the sport trying to keep its integrity, and for the athletes who run the risk of being reduced to a bit of a joke. So for anyone hoping for some salacious tidbit, some little nugget of truth to this story, so far, there is none. There is no suggestion that any athlete has been doing this, no suggestion that any athlete has complained about another doing this, and no suggestion that it's actually going on. Makes for a good story though, doesn't it? And it makes you think. Nothing has been confirmed, nothing has even been properly alleged through the official channels. It's a brilliant story, and not much else.